This time of year, looking around the garden, things can get really interesting, especially after we have a couple of light frosts that we had early in the season, just a couple of days ago. Right behind me here is some Burgundy Sun Coleus, and this is Plum Parfait Coleus, and they both had foliage that turned a very bronzy appearance after just a couple of light frosts. So Brenda and the work study students and the volunteers got busy and hedged them back so they can continue growing while we have a few more weeks of warm weather, hopefully. But down below us, something interesting occurred. Our trailing duckfoot Coleus was not affected by the frost at all, so that's one to file away. Next year, if you're planning to buy some Coleus, especially the new types that will grow in full sun and do not need shearing back all summer, the trailing duckfoot apparently is slightly frost hardy here. Now up above me and behind here is a Coleus that we have had in a hanging basket all season, and they did bring those in the other night when we had some cold weather threatening, and it still looks just gorgeous. But that reminds me that you all need to start thinking about bringing in your house plants and other seasonal color that you've had out that might not be quite so frost hardy. Now back behind me here is a Shrub Fuchsia. It's just starting to bloom again now that we've had some cool weather, but that's one that you'll want to bring in should we get freezing weather threatened. Back behind me is some color that's going to continue for a while for us, and that's Petunias. Surprisingly, they also are very frost hardy. But if you have plants that are fairly delicate, like the Shrub Fuchsia or like this ivy geranium, you want to bring those indoors, and keep in mind just a couple simple tips when bringing houseplants or tropicals or warm season plants indoors. Ease them into it. First of all, inspect them real closely. You want to look under the leaves, both the new foliage and the older foliage, and check for insect pests, especially aphids. They like to cluster around some of the new tender foliage, and then back in here you might find some other pests. So you want to quarantine these for a few days, as well as inspecting them before bringing them in, and make sure that they're not going to transfer pests from your outdoor garden to your other indoor house plants. You also want to ease them in. They've been in very bright light, humid conditions, and you're going to take them indoors to where it's dark and has low humidity. And you may find that some plants, such as the Benjamin fig and so forth, may drop their foliage pretty quickly because of the change in climate. Some of those will regain foliage through the winter. Others, you can ease that process by going from full sun back into the shade, then maybe back under a carport in full shade for a couple of days, and then on into the house so that they won't suffer quite so badly. Well, over here, Brenda Simons, our studio grounds manager, has come up with some unique ways to display pansies for the winter. Brenda, how did you get this in here?
Well, I took 4-inch pansies, these are majestic giants, and just placed them in here with regular potting soil. This is a coconut hull mesh here, and you can also use just regular moss if you want to.
Okay, things that you could get at a nursery or garden center. All right.
And I worked in a little bit of Osmocote in here to keep these green, and so they'll keep growing and filling in. But the nice thing is with this basket I could use the larger pansies, and so it's already pretty much filled in.
All right, that looks great. And that's that nice rose shade. I just love those. All right, now this tower is intriguing to me. It's something that you might think of for just the summertime, but tell us what your secrets are with this.
Well, with this, I thought, well, let's have a tower for the fall. And I just used a smaller pansy. I used the 2-inch ones because the larger pansies wouldn't fit through the holes.
That could be a problem.
Yeah. And then I just filled it up to the whole level and put the pansies in, just kind of squeezing the root ball and place them in there gently. And then you fill it on up to the next level, and I also incorporated some Osmocote in with that. And place some more pansies here, and then the top, just put 4 in the top. Now the thing to remember with these is that you need to keep the old flowers picked off so that they'll keep blooming and so that they'll go ahead and fill out and make a nice basket.
Well, I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch these grow over the next few months. We're going to refer back to them and check up and see how well they've done. And that's a spot of color that you might miss in the wintertime so far as hanging baskets and little hanging towers go. So you might want to try that. Well, Brenda and I have a project on a grand scale of bringing something in for the winter. So let's get busy with that.
Okay.
Well, these banana trees that we planted out in the food part of the studio garden have really gained some height this year, and it's just amazing how much growth can get on one banana tree in the Oklahoma sunshine in one summer.
Well, these have been really popular with all the tourists that have come out to the garden as well.
I guess they like to have that exotic feeling when they come out here, but it is time to put them away for the winter because bananas will not survive past temperatures of 22 degrees. That will kill the rhizome down under the root system. In fact, once temperatures get down around 53, they stop growing altogether. Interestingly enough, though, if it gets up over 100, they also stop growing. So they do have a range between 53 and 100 in which they grow ideally. Now we have one of our smaller banana trees that we're going to tackle right now, and we're going to get some extra help to get these big guys out of here. But anyway, it's interesting to note that this one has bloomed this season and has little baby bananas on it, and sometimes that really frustrates home gardeners because along about September, early October, they start seeing the baby fruits forming and they think, oh gee, I'm going to get bananas, but in fact it takes 4, possibly 6 months for those bananas to go ahead and make a full-size fruit. So you'd have to dig up the whole plant and keep it in a greenhouse in order to have edible bananas later in the winter. Want to keep in mind that this is one fruit that can form without pollination. These are the female flowers. And on up here at the very tip of this stalk is the male flower. And if you should have a larger form of banana that goes ahead and makes a flower stalk late in the summer and then tips over and you see this large flower opening up with pollen, cut that part off if you're planning to dig these up and mature them inside in a greenhouse because the male part will weaken the plant considerably. Now this part of this banana plant is going to die back now that it has flowered, and so there's not much point in trying to save that under your house or in a basement through the winter. But the rest of it we can save, and Brenda's going to help me out by getting this cut back here. And one thing we want to do to make this a manageable task, no matter what size the banana is to eliminate some of the foliage. Now once this started flowering, it also started making little pups or side shoots. And one of the smaller ones down here we're going to pot up for a house plant. But right now we want to make the other parts that we're going to dig up and store in the garage over the winter manageable. And that's indeed one of the easiest ways to store a banana if you don't intend to pot it up and use it as a greenhouse plant through the winter. What you do is you cut back all but the newest leaf right here, trim everything else off like Brenda's doing with the pruners right here, and then you want to get started pulling the mulch away, separating the plant, and these that we've cut back we're just going to put in empty pots and lean against a wall someplace where they're not going to freeze through the winter. As long as it doesn't get below 30, they'll be all right, and that stalk is actually the top of the plant. The growing point is down near the soil line, just like a grass. In fact, one fun fact to know is that the banana is one of the world's largest herbs or herbaceous perennials. And so the growing point's down here, and if you preserve this part through the winter, it will pick up and start growing again from within that. It'll be a larger plant next year. So we'll get started pulling the mulch away and get this dug up and out of here. You know, after digging one of these up, it always amazes me how shallow rooted they are. They come out right near the surface, and this is one reason that bananas sometimes can blow over in the wind. And if you are in a real windy part of the state, you might want to plant yours against a building. Well, it's time to make some decisions here, and we've selected this small one right here to keep indoors in an office over the winter time. And what I've done is just moved the bulk of the soil away so I can see the logical point where this is arising from the mother plant. And then you just go down in with a knife and ease it away. Take your time with this so that you do as little damage to the new plant as possible. And we'll just cut through, and then we'll go around to this side, make another cut right here. We want to keep as much of the root system as we can as well. There we go. And there we have it. And that's enough roots on there for that one to grow real well. And Brenda's going to pot it up for us.
Now, because bananas have such a shallow root system, when you pot them up in pots, you need to keep those roots close to the top. Don't put the banana way down in the bottom of the pot. And you want to kind of simulate the growing conditions that they have outside in your pot.
And then the next thing we want to do is go ahead and knock as much soil off of this as possible. And keep in mind, if you're going to just let it go semi-dormant through the winter and store it, you don't have to pot up in soil. You certainly don't want to wrap it up tight in plastic because that might cause it to rot. So the thing you want to do is knock off the bulk of the soil just so it's manageable, because this thing gets pretty heavy. Knock off the bulk of the roots, and then still got a little bit of a root attached. Just slip it down in a pot like that, one that's tall enough to hold it up, and then just lean it in the corner of a barn or a garage that's not going to freeze. Again, we've taken most of the foliage off, but the living material is still in here, and this will help ensure that when it picks up and begins growing again next spring, we'll have a fairly large plant to start with. And that's pretty much it on bananas. It's a very simple process.